Two. Right. That's my theater voice. A very good evening to you all, and welcome to this exclusive premiere of a piece of art. I'm not going to introduce it now, but maybe later on in this evening, I will let you know exactly why we are here. My name is Tebogo Mwalusi. I am the Gauteng Provincial Convener of Rise Mzansi, and I welcome you all to this wonderful evening. Give yourselves a round of applause. So, let me start off by welcoming a few people that I think it's important to acknowledge. I always like to start with the most important people at Rise Mzansi, and those are our volunteers, our supporters, our field organizers, team leaders. You guys are the ones. You guys make these moments possible, and I always want you to remember, whenever we start anything, we want to start with you. We can't say for the people, by the people, if we don't start with the people, so welcome. I also want to recognize the Gauteng Leadership Collective, which is here, part of the executive team that looks after the province. Good evening. I want to acknowledge members of the National Leadership Collective, the executive team that is and sits at Rise Mzansi. Good evening. Most of them are sitting here at front. Quite unusual because they don't like to sit at front. We like to lead from within, and so it was awkward to get them to sit at the front. But leaders, very good evening. Good to see you all. Clap, 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 clap. I'd like to acknowledge and welcome our premier candidate for Gauteng and the national chair, Mrs. Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Whoop, whoop. Rise, Vuyiswa, rise. Rise, Vuyiswa, rise. And today she has come with her amazing, beautiful, kind, awesome, super fantastic husband. We won't make him stand. We won't make him stand. Protocol observed. The Ramokgopas are represented. I want to acknowledge and welcome my family, the Mwalusi family. They're sitting up front. My wife is here, Unati, and my father. And then I want to acknowledge the media that is in here, in this room. Thank you for spending this evening and telling the story of Rise Mzansi. Many people question, why so many stories get told about us. And I think it's because there's a resonance about the story of South Africa and Rise Mzansi. So we continue to welcome the media and the time that they spend telling our story so that we can achieve the vision of Rise Mzansi. So welcome to them. I also want to acknowledge and welcome the Zibi family. They are seated here up front. I first want to acknowledge Mrs. Zibi, Babala Zibi. She's here with us. So she's already practicing her first lady, protocols. So we gotta practice, get into this thing, So Mrs. Zibi, you're welcome, and a very, very special welcome to you. We know that this journey has been enormously difficult. You have borrowed us, your husband, who has been an incredible leader for us, and today is a little bit about his life, which I think you know intimately, and I hope through this platform and through this story, we get to tell it in a way that honors your family. But I know you're not here alone. I know Chana, the cousins are also here. So welcome to the extended Zibi family. Welcome. And then I want to acknowledge Mrs. Lindiwe Mazibuko. Guys, hey! I'm tempted to say, rise, Lindiwe, rise. But it might cause controversy because, But Lindiwe, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. And I'm going to say a few more words about you later. But welcome, you're welcome. And last but not least, I want to welcome the national leader of Rise Mzansi, Mr. Songezo Zibi. Good evening, sir. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. If I have, sincere apologies. It's not that you're not important. It's just the list can be a bit long. But yeah, welcome to this moment. This past weekend, we commemorated 30 years of what is supposed to be freedom. And I'm not going to politicize today too much, but I think we must always locate ourselves in the present, which is defined by our history. And, you know, we spent the day in Soweto moving from place to place with the leadership of Mr. Seth Mazibuko, who is and was one of the 1976 fighters. And he was just showing us just how important some of the stories and the people that contributed to our freedom today, at least our political freedom. We know that we've got a journey to go, otherwise Rise Mzansi would not exist. But I just wanted us to take just 10 seconds of silence, because we occupy these spaces. We must do so with grace and with appreciation. We mustn't take these things for granted. They could not have been possible without those that gave up their lives, their time and energy in order for this freedom to be in a theater together as a multiracial, intersectional group of people. So if we can just take 10 seconds to honor all South Africans who have passed. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's get cracking. We're going to start this evening with a poem, spoken word. Today is about a celebration of art forms communicated in different ways. I always say that creativity is our superpower, because I truly believe that inherently Africans have got something innate that allows us to offer the world something really beautiful. So to open the session, we've got Phumzile Mahaye, who's going to do a beautiful piece for us. Her stage name is PC Czar. So let's give her a round of applause and welcome her to stage. Thank you, Phumzile.
Thank you very much, Sanbonani. Igama lami nguPhumzile njengoba sisishilo ngokwamahayi ngibuya Alexandra. Ngiyabonga kakhulu ngokuba khona la namhlanje. My poem is called Dig Deep. Dig deep. Dig deep within. Dig deep within the depth of my soul. Dig deep. Diagonally facing is the scar that I got when I tried to dare myself to deal with the dirty thoughts that I denied to divide and dissolve within the depth of my soul. Dig deep. Dig deep within the deepest, darkest depth of my soul. Oh Lord, why Lord? This scar is too deep for me to deal with on my own. I've been thrown like a worthless throne, torn to the bottom of my toes. Blood oozes as I walk on thorns. Blood oozes as I walk on thorns that cause clouds and clods of blood, causing me to dwell on the pain that gains my strength and my birth, delaying my progress and my rebirth. But still, I regain. Nevertheless, the mess has occurred. No use in crying over spilt milk. I know that's a link because I think. And thinking something thick has got to go down my throat. Yes, something thick has got to go down my throat, to my stomach rumbling. I feel sick and weak to my knees. Please, don't leave. It's times like these when I'm in need and I seek. And I seek. But never to find what was meant for me. Dig deep. Dig deep within, because I'm bitter, ngiyamita, yinzondo, yinsolo, ngiyayisola. ukube ngamqonda ngabasaqaqeka lamafinda seqala ukungiqina emqolo. Dig deep. Qonda ngqo njengothola ugawula ezizweni. Qonga uqokelele uma uqeda uqaphele ukuqhamuka ngasemqaleni. Uqale phansi uqoqe isizwe esesiqhelelene. Uqaqe amafindo aqinile aqhuzula amaqhawe. Waqhamuka onomqondo oqondile waqhelisa amaqhinga waqhubekisa ingqondo eqondile. Dig deep and rise, Mzansi.
Yemachola pumentilongweni tinengaka ngaka somsi wam iyayo awo tinengaka ngaka somsi wam wemachola yo yo lo mama iyayo awo tinengaka ngaka somsi wam tolingomo yo yo lo mama uyayo awo tinengaka
It's been a while, my friend. I have watched you fade away into the darkness of all your mistakes. It's time to let it go. 'Cause all this time I've been searching for your light in places that you have outgrown. You've come such a long way with your back against the wall, and yet you still rise tall. Yet you still rise tall through it all. Kanyisi sibane sakho sikhanyisele nabanye usungalibala amandla kasezandleni zakho. Khanyisa isibane sakho sikhanyisele nabanye usungalibala amandla kasezandleni zakho. Khanyisa isibane sakho sikhanyisele nabanye usungalibala amandla kasezandleni zakho. Khanyisa, khanyisa, khanyisa isibane sakho. Khanyisa, 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 khanyisa isibane sakho.
Halala one time. Halala one time. Halala one time. Rise, Mzansi, rise. Rise, Mzansi, rise. Kanyisa, rise, Kanyisa. Woo! We want to love Shagati. Hey! Hey, utalemala, man. Woo! Guys, the energy. That poem, PCZar, where is she? Oh my gosh. Can we clap? Yo! Woo! Oh, such a fitting tribute, especially because Uput Songezo is of Xhosa descent. So, you know, we got to sit in the moment and really celebrate our identity, which is what today is really about. And then you got to see the music video for Kanyisa, which we produced by us, made by us, by us. Yeah, one. I want to acknowledge Bonga Kwana. I don't know where she's sitting. I can't see her from here. Yeah, there she is. There she is. That's what's up. That's what's up. Sure. She wrote the song. She wrote the melody. She performed the song. And shout out to DJ Kenzero for being one of the executive producers. And Aaron Halivi as well. We literally had to come up with this concept and deliver it. And I hope we've made Rise Mzansi proud with our official song for Rise Mzansi, Kanyisa. And so, ladies and gents, we're going to move into watching this beautiful documentary, Identity Matters. We constantly have to navigate the question, who am I? Why am I here? Umang. Who am I? Why am I here? And in this 20-minute docu-series, we get to see and have a window into the life of Mr. Songezo Zibi. He is someone who doesn't like to talk a lot about himself, but through this journey, we have asked him to share a little bit more deeply so that we can get into who is the man behind the title, who is the man behind the words, who is the man behind the vision, who is the man behind the sacrifice, who is the man behind the hard work, who is the man behind Rise Mzansi. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the show.
Tell you about the place I come from. I'm from Kanduli in the Eastern Cape. You've probably never heard of it. If you have never seen it, and you may never see it in your life. But this is where I herded cattle, I looked after sheep, and I tilled the land. From 3 a.m., we produced all senza, all echana, all solons. It is this life that explains why, personally, I'm here today. Deep down, some of us are instinctively village people. We are at my home, Zwelisha location in Mkanduli, and this is where I was born, the main homestead. I think when I was a baby, there's a structure behind the right at the end, there was a rondavel there. So when I was a baby and I came back from the hospital, that's where I would have gone in 1975. And I was raised by my grandparents. Every structure that was here at the time, I mean, most of them are gone, was made of mud bricks that my grandmother and her friends in the village made themselves, the bricks with ilima. It's called litsima in Sesotho, but ilima, like come together and they made the bricks. And this is my home. When I grew up, there was a lot of surrogacy, to act as surrogates. My family is is diverse. The experiences are diverse. My great-grandmother being a domestic worker. My grandmother was a housewife who farmed geese and pigs and so on. My grandfather was a teacher and was a school principal. He was a very calm person, quiet almost, right? And yet he was able to bring people together. He had a lot of influence and people respected him. But my grandmother is my hero. If we brought a problem to my grandmother and she agreed that it's a problem, and you had to see her get up to go and deal with it, it was like a flash, and she would bolt out the door and go and sort it out right now. There was no waiting. But she was also fair, so she could like fight with people. And then the next day, she's having roasted millies outside. It's over, you know. We dealt with it yesterday.
So he grew up in a place where it was always full. Even people who were Amakisa, they were there. We grew up in a family where everybody was the blazer. People will say in the whole area, take him to Kwatishala, take him, send Kwatishala, and everybody would take him to this place. So he grew up in a family where everybody was honored, whether he's disabled or not. His two uncles, the first one, which was Vuyani, who died in Lesotho raids in the ANC camp, was also gave him a light, though he was still very, very young.
Vuyani was working in Mthatha here as a clerk, and he would visit home like everyone. But then there came a time when he was cast from home and he didn't visit for a long time. It transpired that he had skipped the country, and we did not know when and how it happened. And then came the Maseru raid of 1982. And one attorney was working in Mthatha here, came here to report to the family that of the 22 people who died there, one of them was Vuyani. And so that's how we came to know that he was in Lesotho. They were attacked overnight, massacred actually, by the white police of the then white regime. My parents were devastated, so much that it even broke my mother's health.
The violence we've come through as a country, you know, in Vuyani himself, in the deteriorating health of my grandmother, once Vuyani passed away. And in fact, when I went to boarding school, I never saw her again. So she went into the hospital and she passed away. So it's hard. You know, as my uncle was saying, the whole thing broke her health.
I did not have money for Model C schools, but someone invited me to a school which was called All Saints Senior College. All Saints Senior College was sponsored by Kellogg's Foundation.
I came for the entrance test in 1990, and I actually didn't think I was going to be accepted at all. I felt I had struggled. And when my mom said to me that I'd been accepted, I was stunned. And so we came, and I remember that we came the day before, or 2 days before, the school opening. And then we did orientation the day before.
Yeah.
And then on the day schools were supposed to open, we went to class. I come from a school where orientation begins, the day teaching is supposed to start. And like we went to each class, we got our books and they started teaching immediately. I mean, that got me dizzy.
And homework.
And homework, and then we got homework, and it was due tomorrow. And so you're in the middle of that adjustment. The kids that you're in school with speak different languages. They're from all over. Some are speaking isiZulu, Chivenda, Sesotho, Setswana. So it's like there is a lot that you're dealing with. I can't remember who told us that Madiba was coming.
We didn't know. We were suddenly told, and if you remember, we ran up there.
Oh, you also didn't know?
I didn't know.
He really like affirmed us. He said, "You're great."
Yeah. Do you remember Songezo? He said what a leader is.
Yeah.
That was the big moment, because he said a good leader, he leads from behind, except when it comes to times of danger.
Yeah.
Then he moves to the front. And basically, he's saying that leadership mustn't just think that they are now, must be always in the front. And I think Songezo, if I may say so, has picked up some of those sorts of messages that we shared at All Saints.
Yeah, and he also said that he told us it's important to study. He said, "I'm old."
Oh yeah.
Remember, he said, I'm very old. I'm not going to be around for long. I'm going to be irrelevant. It's you guys who must stay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I got a career guidance teacher for the first time, and I had wanted to be a journalist, and but she was always talking about all of these like professional careers, like being an accountant and this kind of thing. I enrolled for a national diploma in public relations management with Technicon SA, just for that year, and then I was going to get some credits and then do journalism after, but I enjoyed it. So the following year I just went to P-Tech and I got a job at Volkswagen. I started working here in 1998 as an intern. So working in a big factory like this with the kind of complexities that it has is on its own character building. But being a shy person, it was also the first time I got to do public speaking. Not all the employees could understand English well. There were quarterly general meetings with thousands of workers. I had to interpret this into class. And so I got used to speaking in front of thousands of people, at least 4 times a year. And I also became famous because of it, because everybody would see me there. And so I still meet a lot of people from that time who greet me I was called by my surname here, Zibi. So they just say, "Hey, Zibi!" And I look at them and I just know that one is from Volkswagen. I kept the friendships here, which endure to this day, including my wife that I met here.
He actually came to do a presentation for us. We were graduate trainees. About the company, about the products, what we go through during induction. After that, I didn't see him for months, but I saw him at church. It just grew from there. One thing that I've appreciated being married to him is the fact that I didn't feel that I needed to be superwoman. From work I can seriously just relax. He was very hands-on when the kids were growing up.
So when I left Volkswagen, I worked for Extrata, a mining company, which was a new field for me. And it was also transformative in terms of how I understood the purpose of government and politics, because it was during the time of the mining charter and how communities can and should benefit out of mining. It was during the Marikana time and so on. And look, I learned a couple of things. The first is that the functioning of government is very important to whether an economy is going to grow or not. And in the mining experience, I saw government not working as it should. It wasn't necessarily corruption. It was just a case where the regulators didn't appear to understand properly the industry they were regulating, and the industry not appearing to understand the exigencies of being in government. 1. 2, I got to work again with unions, but from NUMSA at Volkswagen to the National Union of Mine Workers and AMCU in the mining sense, which is really important when you are interested in the economy and how you can get all the stakeholders to work together. So that experience was good, and I continue to have excellent friends in the unions.
My first impressions of Songezo, it was rather intimidating before he started at APSA. Reporting to the ex-editor of the Business Day newspaper can be very daunting for any comms person. But very soon, as soon as he started, I realized that this was completely unfounded. And Songezo was just a regular down-to-earth kind of guy. He listens to people before he reacts. He's one of the very few leaders who's willing to change his mind and willing to enter into debate and quite open to being convinced otherwise. So while I support the mission and the greater mission of Rise Mzansi, I'm here because I believe in Songezo's leadership.
Songs is very protective of his family. We put family first. Even with the kids, they know they look after their siblings.
My kids were 13 and 14 when my husband died. And I was working. I'm working in the municipality, and I'm always away from home. And then I decided to take them to boarding school. And they were having issues adapting, and they were having issues of the fact that the father died with a car accident, and I didn't have a car at the time. And then I spoke to Songezo about it, and then Songezo says, okay, we can rotate as a family to help these kids because they are not coping at school. It's only been a year after their death. He could speak their language. He's young. He's the uncle that bayafikeleleka to the uncle, and they would talk about anything and everything. On holidays, he would take my kids to Joburg. He helped my kids heal, and also me. Forgetting the fact that I don't have a husband.
My family and in my community, they're not cowards. We try and make the best of the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And I think what would be a shame is for my family and many other families. I mean, families were wiped out elsewhere, right? To go through all of that and then we throw it all away. We can't throw it all away. We don't need to wait until things have gone to the dogs absolutely before we do something, because that becomes really, really difficult. So I think in a way, as sad as it can be to reflect on the lives of some of my relatives here and how those lives ended, it's also inspiring. These were not people who sat back. These are people who stepped forward.
He's one of the guys that I trust will make a change, really, a change. We need to teach some people some lessons. They cannot make a mockery of our brothers and husbands. He took the baton. And once more, Zibi stands out and stands up for the nation.
Politics cannot just be about positions. It cannot be about making laws for their own sake or controlling budgets. Politics has to be about bringing people together. Politics has to be about creating a sense of community, a powerful sense of community. It has to be about the things that people worry about before they go to bed, the things that connect them to their roots, to their moral center, to their ethical center, and to their values. And I call that the politics of the soul, because it is not the politics of power and positions. It is the politics of people's lives that are wholesome and complete. And it can be done because people have been crying for that kind of politics. We need leaders who ask the people what they need rather than tell them what's good for them.
It's been a while, my friend. I have watched you fade away into the darkness of all your mistakes. It's time to let it go. 'Cause all this time I've been searching for your light in places that you have outgrown. You've come such a long way with your back against the wall, and yet you still rise tall. Yet you still rise tall through it all. Khanyisa isibane sakho, sikhanyise.
Sure. I'm not sure how to feel about what I've just watched. Complex emotions, complex stories. But let me say this. I've worked in many organizations, businesses, corporates, multinationals. I've even worked for my dad. But without a doubt, Songezo Buti, you are one of the most inspirational men I've ever encountered. What you have allowed and enabled for this to become is something nothing short of phenomenal. We have already won. We have already won. And yes, we're 30 days until the day that we bring this all together. But let us never forget that the human journey and the human story must always be alive. We have no control over what happens in 30 days' time. But how we feel and treat each other, that we have control over. So thank you for sharing your story, Putu. Thank you. So at this stage, 20 minutes is too short to get into the life of anyone, any man, any great man who has lived like Songezo has. But we wanted to take it a step further and get him in conversation so that we can unpack some of the other elements of the story. And so we invited another giant, another incredible human being. You know, this lady, this leader, for me, exemplifies the standard, the gold standard of what public service and leadership is. Mrs. Lindiwe Mazibuko, and I'm not going to tell her bio because I think you guys can go and read it, but one of the things that she exemplifies is true excellence and servitude leadership. And what's more powerful is that being a young black woman in this country that has been deeply violent against black women and standing up and being on the opposition benches against violence and insults and abuse and still standing your ground and fighting the good fight. That's the standard. She inspires us all. Her ability to have gone through academia, she's studied locally and internationally, she's built things, institutions. Future Elect, which is a platform that prepares young leaders for public leadership, is incredible. And so I stand here to welcome you. I'm having a bit of a groupie moment, like a bit of a celeb moment, you know. We used to watch you on TV and not know what you go through. But here we are walking straight into what you were going through. So if you may, please join us. Who best to grill Songezo then? And so on the other chair will be the man of the moment. Mr. Zibi, we look forward to hearing your story through the eyes of this film that we've just watched, but also through the questions of Mrs. Mazibuko. Sir, please join us on stage. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to get back into my seat and let's get the show on the road.
Thank you so much. Dibucho, I want to start with a correction. Phela mina ngiyumama Zibuko angishadile. I'm a single woman. It's Mama Mazibuko, not Mrs. Mazibuko, but I forgive you. I am a woman of a certain age, I suppose. Perhaps I should be married. Thank you for this incredibly warm welcome. What a special event this is. Songezo and I have been friends for some years now. We actually met when he was with Extrata. I was still in politics. I worked for him briefly at Business Day as one of his columnists. And I happen to believe that period in your career, Songezo, you created a space for young black public intellectuals that didn't exist anywhere else. I get to continue writing in the same newspaper group to this day because of the credibility you conferred on people like myself, Khanti and others, who, had you not given us space in that really establishment publication, would not be able to share our views, our perspectives, and our opinions. So you've been making space for future leaders for a long time now. And it's been really special to watch your personal journey. It feels fairly inevitable now that we look back at the beginning. But I'm going to start with the question about the meaning of telling your story, because I think I know you well enough to know that this has probably been a torturous experience for you. That the idea of sitting for 20 minutes and watching a video that is entirely about you, telling your story, feeling yourself, become emotional and unable to articulate yourself, has been, I'm sure it's been quite heart-wrenching. But one of the things we talk about in my organization at Future Elect is that if you don't tell your own story, others will tell it for you. So I want to start by asking you how this experience has been for you. And what did you hope to get out of it, to the extent that you had aspirations for this experience?
Lindiwe, thank you, and good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. So, you know, the most difficult thing was actually dealing with the harassment of my colleagues to actually tell the story. I really didn't want to. I still don't. For many reasons. Also because I think we live in a politics that elevates individuals. Yeah. And we get into a cult of personality around certain people. And over time, we think they can do no wrong. And we can also think that their experiences are unique when they're not. And I've never thought that my story is worth telling, because I think people will roll their eyes and say, well, okay, so what's different? And so it's actually really been difficult. It's difficult to sit here and talk about myself, because I never want to. And I fight about it all the time with Ghana. Because it says tell your story, and I keep taking things out when we prepare. So I don't like it, to be honest. But I was convinced, as Pritika said, eventually, and also to your point, they said the same thing. If your story is not known, then other people will tell it for you, and it becomes difficult to do it. So, but it's emotional. It's emotional. There's quite a bit. I mean, they had to edit the thing down. I broke down a few times because there is a lot of violence in my personal life, best friends, family, and so on, and political violence. That. So I don't like to talk about it because it just makes me cry.
And I'm sure you walk this fine line of feeling like you don't want to exploit your pain, right, for votes or support. or make yourself a kind of a victim in a space where so many others have suffered,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Look, also I've said my grandmother was my hero. She still is. And the reason is that my grandmother was brave. She went through a lot, like black women, black rural women, all over, right? But man, there was never a single day, even when she was sick, that my grandmother's head was bowed. Just.
So I think it's probably likely that your philosophy around the politics of the soul comes not only from your pain, but also from the joy of being part of a family that came together, even when young men were sent to the other side of the country. Uncles and brothers were lost to political violence. Nevertheless, you've sort of built this political philosophy, I think, that resonates a great deal with your personal history. Tell us a little bit more about the politics of the soul. And before you do, I want to suggest that what has set Rise apart from the other new players on the block has been this focus on people, on bringing people together. You've actually embodied this philosophy. You haven't come with ideas from the top down. Even this principle that, we don't tell people what's good for them, we ask them what they need, seems to be very much at one with this politics of the soul. But tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and I think, Lindiwe, I want to give credit to my colleagues at Rise, because you might have an abstract idea of what it is, but the people that really teach you a lot more about what you are thinking are the people around you, because you realize that they've been thinking about it for a long time, they've been thinking deeper about it for a long time, and they've been living it for a long time. Such that even the times when I was thinking about it, they were doing it in fighting different struggles in different places. And one of the things I really want to emphasize is that I just am a spokesperson for a large number of crazy and compassionate people who believe in this. But as far as my own upbringing is concerned, there's somewhere where my mother was explaining that. So in our village, for some reason, people with mental health problems who had strayed onto our village, they would get sent to our home. And so there was always somebody with mental health issues around us. And my grandmother mentioned one of them. Sometimes we had 3 at any given point in time. That's a very humbling experience, because if I remember one of the times my grandmother really beat me up, we were we were making fun of someone with mental health issues, and she fetched a stick, and she beat me up. But over time, I have come to understand that compassion is political. Care is political. Love is political. Bringing people together is political. And I think we have to try to build a politics that is compassionate and caring, and sees people that others ridicule, and see the humanity in them, and be bothered by it, to the extent that we try as hard as we can to make sure they have access to the same dignity that I have. And I think if we expressed politics in that way, we would all be we'd be in a better society. So for me, that's where I kind of spontaneously got this expression of the politics of the soul when I was in Durban some months ago, because I hadn't had a sort of a word for it.
So, there's a saying about how leadership doesn't require a title, and I'm I marvel at how often political leaders reference mothers, grandmothers as the first leaders with whom they had an experience of leadership, from whom they learned their leadership values. Can you tell us about some of, in addition to compassion and wanting others to have as good a life as you want to have for yourself, what are some of the other values, leadership values that your grandmother embodied, that you hope to embody in public office?
So I also learned something from my grandmother and my grandfather. So they were like a tech team like no other. So my grandmother was the thug, okay? And so because we farmed maize, right? So the sheep and goats would go into our millie field. I mean, all the boys had a similar challenge, and then you had to go and try and corral them onto our property and then onto our kraal. Which, when you're dealing with goats, anybody who's ever dealt with goats, no, this is nearly impossible. So this takes you like a long time, and by the time you're done, you're sweating and you're very angry because your soccer match has been interrupted where you were playing. Anyway, so you bring, and then my grandfather was this quiet, kind, listening person. And, the culprit would come and, they're looking down and they say, oh, Khadebe, oh, lo, man, hey, and like their long excuse. And my grandmother would be standing there, like, watching this whole thing. And then my grandfather would be like, don't do it again, don't do it again. And then my grandmother said to my grandfather once, you will sit alone, bored in heaven, while you watch the rest of us having fun in hell. But here's the thing. There would be instances when my grandfather would allow my grandmother to beat someone up verbally, eh? And he would pretend like he can't see what's going on. And my grandmother would have a go. And this person keeps looking at my grandfather to see, and then eventually, when this person was thoroughly trashed, he would say, Imamam Gebe. He would come and bring the compassion in. What's the lesson? My grandfather saw my grandmother, not just as his wife, but as a partner in the whole thing. My grandmother was a formidable community leader in her own right, apart from that. But I learned something about you not always leading by yourself, and letting other people play what they're good at, right? And one of the things my colleagues at APSA, some of them are here, would struggle with, I would say, if I don't talk to you often about your job, it means you're doing a good job. If I talk to you often, you must know there is a problem, right? But I trust you to do the work that you are supposed to. And that's what I learned at home, right? And you can apply those lessons in corporate life, in political life, and so on.
I think it's fascinating, and I want to talk about your really touching interaction with your former school principal, and in particular the story you told about President Mandela.
Yes.
A good leader leads from behind until times of danger, when she moves to the front. I'm paraphrasing. And I've always wondered how you balance, it seems that you've embedded that set of values even in the structure of Rise's leadership, right? And I always worry about the trade-off between leaders relinquishing their position in the front row in favor of collective leadership, but then collective leadership becoming like an albatross around their neck, and an opportunity to lead by committee and not be accountable.
Yeah.
But it seems that actually in the way that you've structured your leadership, you've balanced those very two things. Does it come from this philosophy that we lead from the back until we have to be at the sharp end of the spear, and then we move to the front?
We also have people who don't mind being at the front where the danger is also, by the way. So it's not like so, yeah, look, it's really, for me, it's more about sharing responsibility and understanding that when people have a problem, they can rely on me to back them up. I mean, I learned a couple of things. It was not just what Madiba said, even in life, I mean, in corporate life. My first boss at Volkswagen, Matt Genrich, never allowed other managers to like admonish us. Never. Right? You tell me what my people have done, I will deal with them. You don't walk in here and shout at my people. You do not. Okay? So he would go and beat up that person and then come and beat you up. Right? But there's an important lesson in that, which is that when you do that, so the accountability doesn't go away, but at the same time you have each other's back, you can look the other way and be busy with other things, and your colleagues will do the work that needs to be done. And you don't need to check in on them and ask. So I know the ANC has used this collective leadership thing to escape responsibility, and I don't think we should have that version of collective leadership. I'm talking more about recognizing what people are good at and allowing them to do it. And not try and get into other people's jobs. You know, we can't be Jomosono, all of us. You know. Owner, captain,
manager,
coach. No. No Jomoism in South Africa. We'll get relegated if we...
So I really love the anecdote about you learning a lot about speech making at Volkswagen.
Yeah. Ooh.
And it's amazing the times that you get thrust into the spotlight, you know, by your own, I suppose, nerve, cheek, competence, combination of that and luck. And how you became famous. But you were also straddling two worlds, right? You realize this. You were translating not only language, but you were translating culture. Tell us about that experience, and tell us how you've hung on to those lessons now that you've got to make speeches for a living, frankly.
Lindiwe, I'll come back to that. Can I talk about the school I went to?
Yes.
All Saints. This is so important. Yeah. You know, we don't think about the importance of laying a seed now so that you can produce great results later on. That school was a no-fee school for us. So it wasn't actually sponsored by the Kellogg Foundation. I was sponsored by the Kellogg Foundation, but there were many others. The alumni of that school is incredible. Some have gone really great, others have gone rogue. So I'll mention just a couple. So Pumla Dineo Gola is an alumni of that school. Mazibuko Jaha is an alumni of that school. I am, there are many others. Machela Koko is an alumni of that school, right? But the vision behind the school was that you have to try and give an opportunity to the most promising black kids from different parts of the country and take them out of the Bantu education system and put them in a school environment where they've got the facilities they need, and create an open environment where they can become themselves and become adults in that environment. And the people that I'm mentioning who've done far greater things than me are a testament to the power of that idea. And I don't think we do it enough as a people. And I dare say, now that we have black billionaires and so on, I don't think they've got that level of vision. We must still get money from the Kellogg Foundation, which I think is just like, anyway. So, but Volkswagen, I started in 1998 as a...
It's actually an important point you're making, because you didn't arrive, you arrived fully formed at VW, right? You didn't arrive green.
No.
The foundations had already been laid.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't. I certainly not. And I got to Volkswagen, and many of the workers didn't actually have matric. They weren't so good with English and so on. And Volkswagen globally has a culture where, and it's a German thing, unions are represented on the board, and management accounts to all the workers every 3 months. The problem is there's a turnaround strategy on the go. Everybody has to understand the strategy and understand how far we've gone, and people can't speak English properly. So I had to interpret. Now, mind you, I never used to rewrite the speech in isiXhosa. So it was like in court or in church, where the MD is speaking, I translate some sort of production or financial concept into isiXhosa. And it helped me deal with large audiences. I'm a shy person. I don't like being among lots of people. Nothing against you guys. But so it just taught me. And my boss, Matt Gendrich, that man incredibly validated me. He was like, no, we're not going to hire someone from outside. This youngster is good enough. And I believe that he can do it. And he put his job on the line to put a thin intern who had just started working there in front of workers, in front of a hard-nosed boss who didn't take any nonsense. And also taught me about that pressure. So when somebody has given you the validation and the confidence, you also have a responsibility to perform, right? And I think I did.
So I want to round off this part about your career and then move to some of the more personal side of Songezo, the politician. So you're at Extrata.
Yeah.
I remember the mining charter. It was the subject of every second meeting I had. Tell us about how that helped sort of crystallize some of your vision for economic policy.
So by the way, one of the people I spent a lot of time working through these difficulties that we had regulation-wise is sitting somewhere there. I won't ask him to stand up. My friend Rakesh and Henry. And so here's the thing. One of the things I've got to understand is that you've got to do regulation in a way that amplifies the impact of what you're doing. So let me give you an example. And I want to qualify this by saying, I really believe in transformation. I'm just now talking about the how, and I'll share some impact with you. So when the South African economy was growing in Thabo Mbeki's time, and everybody gives him credit for it, what was really pulling it up was the Chinese economy. The Chinese economy was growing, but was adding the size of the Australian economy every year. And China was urbanizing. They were building entire cities and so on. So that infrastructure demand drives the need for commodities, right?
For raw materials.
And so the commodities super cycle kicked off. South Africa benefited enormously from the commodities super cycle, but not to the extent that
Jobless
it could.
growth, yeah.
Not to the extent that it could. Because guess what? In 1998, we had, for our own reasons, not because anybody was bad, decided to have the Mining, Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act, which meant that everyone had to reapply for their licenses, which means you didn't have new mines, and we couldn't supply more of the stuff to China. And we had jobless growth. That's just a fact of life. It's an objective fact. You can go and look it up. If you don't trust me, talk to Michael Sachs, who's one of the more respected progressive economists in the country. He will tell you, right? So we've missed that opportunity, and it went. The coal sector alone, in that same time, lost the equivalent or the opportunity for about $785 million in exports because the railways were beginning to degrade and all of these kind of things. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is you've got to ask questions such as, how do we do regulation in such a way that we achieve our national objectives, but we minimize economic damage now and in the long term? Last example, when I left, one of the reasons I left Extrata was that I felt I was doing the same thing over and over again. There was a backlog of 4,500 integrated water use licenses that mining operations were waiting for, right? So that they can operate legally. So the new investment was being held up. What do ANC people say? There's an investment strike, and you think, guy, just process the licenses and you're gonna, so that's why I'm saying those kind of experiences were transformative in the sense that you now can see that, okay,
this is how business and the government should interact, regulation and the economy and so on, and how we unlock investment. These summits we do here are nonsense. You don't need that thing. It's a waste of money. It's a PR exercise. Get rid of that thing, right? That Cyril does. Just get the work done, right? Make sure there's no licensing backlog. Make sure the regulations are clear and everybody can understand them. Those who perform well make money. Those who don't, you punish them. Anyway, so that's how for me Xstrata was really transformative personally from the depth of my understanding of the economy.
I think one of the strange things I've had to observe watching you sort of transition from the private sector into politics is watching people misunderstand who you are. And I think your career thus far, up to Xstrata, and then into Business Day, and then into ABSA, has positioned you in a lot of people's minds as a kind of establishment, an establishment candidate, which you couldn't be the furthest thing from. But tell us what it was like to be inside and to be editing an establishment communicator.
You mean the Business Day?
And what did you learn from that experience that you've taken into politics?
I have to be careful, there's Lufuno here.
I say this as an avid subscriber and reader of Business Day.
There's Lufuno here who worked with me, was my colleague. Yeah. And him and I used to talk around this time until, what time, Lufuno? Until 10, 10:30. The second edition, right? Would go at 10:30. So, by the way, this happens by accident. So I'm leaving Xstrata. I had been writing, by the way, and I had a passion for journalism. So I'm leaving Xstrata. I'm going to take a few months off and write my first book or finish it and then go back and look for a job again. And I tell Peter Bruce this. I go and I see him. I was actually very upset with him when I went to see him. So I went to tell him, where to get off. And then he also can't get me fired because I've resigned. And so I told him that I was leaving. He said, no, please come and work here. You can be a writer and do research for your book. And it was all attractive in terms of the access to information and people. So I joined the Financial Mail as senior associate editor, also for the political economy stuff, because I now had a sort of a granular understanding. And 11 months later, he was leaving, and he was asked to recommend an editor. And he asked me if I was interested. I said, no, I'm not. Firstly, I had taken a 60% pay cut to do this job, which I don't know if I told my wife, but so no, I want to go back and work. But I had imposter syndrome. I had been a journalist only for 11 months. I had journalist friends who were editors that I'd worked with for a long time. I spoke to Mpumelelo Mkhabela, spoke to Mondli Makanya, spoke to Figilan Zigelelo Moy, who was at some point editor of the Sowetan, I think, or deputy editor. And I said, guys, I don't think I can do this, and I don't like failing when there could be someone better to do the job. So I was inclined to say no. And they insisted that I take it, and they said I would be great, and they also said we will support you. So I took the job. But now, again, that thing I was saying, you must now perform. And I had to do certain things which were important. So we had to change who provides intellectual input into the Business Day. So I came up with this idea of columnists not writing every week, but every fortnight, so that I could introduce younger black columnists. Wandile Sihlobo, Kanti Pai, Nomalanga Mkhize, Professor Nomalanga Mkhize. I had recommended Zamandlovu to Peter Bruce actually beforehand. You were writing for Business Day and so on. And we had these alternative voices that you hadn't seen in a newspaper like the Business Day to write about issues from a different perspective. And not just have older white men writing. But you also keep that balance because, a newspaper doesn't belong to you as an editor. It belongs to its readers. And there are people who want to read, whoever from the Free Market Foundation every week. And so you got to have them in too. But no, we must have the other voices. And I mean, Wandile Sihlobo got to be known. right? And the contribution he's making to the country is
Advising the president.
yeah,
Extraordinary.
it's fantastic. So I look at him and I'm really proud of him. I look at Kanti and many others and I'm proud. So, but I had people like Lufuno and others who did not say, who's this guy? Who does he think he is? These guys lifted me up. But it was important to do what Pritika says in the video about me being able to listen and understanding that Lufuno and Nyasha and others and Sharon had more experience than me in the newsroom. So in applying my judgment, I must always listen to what they have to tell me because I've been here before, and then I can make an informed decision rather than saying, who are you? I'm the boss, I'll make the decision here. Because then I make them look bad and I look worse. And that's what I...
Amazing. I'm going to switch now to the personal and ask you a question that is almost exclusively asked of women.
Right.
And I'm really happy I get to ask you today.
Right.
How are you balancing family life? with the rigors of the campaign trail?
It's very hard. Especially that I think so. We have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and the boys are my wife's kids. The girl is my daughter, and she's the youngest, right? And I think it irritates my wife, but and so I feel particularly guilty for her because the boys are like 17 and 15. They think they have their own lives. But this one will ask me, why didn't you tell me you're going to Cape Town? When are you coming back? And sometimes I will come, she's sleeping, and I will leave again before she wakes up. I tell you, that's difficult for me. All our kids, I could rock them to sleep better. There is a certain way that they all sleep, right? With a one arm hanging. That would just put them to sleep. And those are very special for me. But you know what, though? It's not just me. Debs has got young kids, Fuiswa. And so we're all juggling the same, right? It's not, honestly. And the volunteers at RISE have even less support than we do. And man, these guys are out there, and sometimes are just,
So I want to request a quick interlude because we have a surprise for you.
Okay.
It's a message.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask the tech guys at the back to go ahead and cue it up.
If you know Songezo and he knows you, he is going to embrace everyone else who is in your life, which he has done in my life. My whole family knows him and they love him. My mom passed, but my mom loved songs. I still remember if he would write an article, my mom would cut it out and keep it and give it to me when I get home. Or if she would see him on TV, he'll call me and say, "Oh, I saw songs on TV. He spoke so well." And this is just a testament of who he is and how he embraces the different people that he meets. My sisters, they love him. He loves them. He didn't have to do all of that, really, because he is just married to my friend. So embracing my extended family has got nothing to do. He doesn't benefit from it, but he does it because he is just a genuine person.
Thank you so much. So that's a message from your wife's best friend.
Yes.
Another example of how your commitment to family extends beyond blood relations. Tell us a bit about your relationship with her.
So with quite, no, so
I was told something that I'm not going to repeat about second wives and so
So you know, so when we got our own home for the first time, it was a 2-bedroom. It was a 2-bedroom, and we said that the other room is hers. When she visits us, because the two of them are incredibly close. They practically grow up together, and they're practically sisters. And if she's my wife's sister, then she's my sister-in-law, and her family is my family. But also, I think having grown up, I mean, the extended family we had. I have cousins, and I don't know how we are cousins at home. So this idea of family as being much more than your blood is big for me. So the people that I'm with at Rise are my family. We spend most of our lives together. Even if we're all out there, we're all in the same thing, and each of them are my family, and I really care for them, and they care for each other and for me. So Kwaita is a very special person in my life, because she's a wonderful person and she's a special person to my wife.
Yeah. I have 2 last questions, and then I want to open the floor.
Sure.
I'm going to invite 3 people to ask three questions at the same time, and then give you a chance to wrap up.
Sure.
My first is about, I happen to believe leadership of any kind requires a creative outlet, right? If you don't have, and Dibuko spoke very eloquently about how Africa is a creative, it's humming with creativity.
Yes.
Do you have a creative outlet? What is it? And how does it help you be a better leader?
I write. I'm a writer. I can get in the writing. If I were to tell you the one thing I don't get to do enough is write. I frustrate my colleagues because I want to write things myself. And you know, when I'm writing, and I've now done 3 books, I do it I wake up at like 3 a.m. And I do much of my writing between 3 and 6 in the morning, because there's no noise, nothing. You know, there is something that writers will understand. The thing flows from your brain, through your hands, onto your fingers.
Like
and
music.
Eventually you think through your fingers. Ne? You think through your fingers. And people will ask you, well, how did you get, like, I didn't think it, my fingers just moved. So that's my creative outlet. It's writing and storytelling.
Wonderful. My last question, the president, when he met you at college, mentioned the importance of lifelong learning, President Mandela.
Yes.
Are you a permanent student? Do you believe in lifelong learning? And if so, what did you learn most recently?
I don't think I will ever stop learning. It comes from 2 places. I mean, Madiba is important, but you know my uncle who was there in the documentary? That guy has been a student most of his life. He's 72 this year. My uncle started school in 1958, and he studied all the way through to 2000 and whatever. He did his teacher's diploma, did a BA, did a BEd, did an honors BA, did a master's, an MA, he did an LLB, did an LLM, and then he left the public service. He worked in the Department of Education and started a new career as an advocate of the High Court. So he's an inspiration to me in terms of just the learning. But if I could have time for one thing, it's to absorb information. And the frustrating thing about politics and campaigning is that I don't have enough time to learn, and it drives me insane because you learn from talking to people, you learn from reading and so on. So I've now become an audiobooks person, which also annoys my wife because she'll talk to me and I'm listening to a book. But that's how I now do it. But I must say, Lindiwe, now I'm giving a long answer. The people that we've met in the last year, in the last 2 years, if I include Rivonia Circle, have taught me more than I have learned in the last 10. And those are the ordinary South Africans that we get to eyeball and listen to. Man, you just think, oh my God, I've been so ignored. So that's a learning, this process also.
I have the most vivid memory, before I open the floor, of it often sounds like lip service when you say you're learning from ordinary people. But when I was in politics, my constituency in KwaZulu-Natal was divided by the N2. I had Nduzuma, Wamashu, Lindelani on the one side. I had Lalusha, Durban North, Umhlanga on the other. And the thing I learned from those two communities is that they had the same concerns. Yeah. They wanted speed bumps because taxis were running over their children. Yeah. They were active in their student governing bodies, whether they had jobs or not. They wanted better for their children than they had for themselves. They were equally committed and equally engaged with their leadership. And it's very easy to think about so-called ordinary South Africans as people who need to listen to you, but you exemplify listening to them.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. Thank you. I'm going to open up the floor now and invite 3 people. Friends, a question, unlike my questions, is fairly short. It contains an inquiry and it ends with a question mark. Who would like to ask Songezo a question? I'm going to number you and I'm going to favor the right for non-political reasons. 1, 2, and 3. Is there a roving microphone?
2.
Where was it? 2, number 1. Please remember to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Mailula Labaran. So it is an honor and a privilege to speak to you today. So I have, I will say a few questions for you, Mr. President. I won't let you go.
Okay, this is complicated. Let's choose one.
Okay. I just want to ask Mr. Songezo that what do you think is the biggest difference between you and your opponents? And how are you going to make our economy work, since you can see that our economy is struggling? Thank you so much.
Excellent. Good question. Number 2, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is, I can say Nomsandazo, but I prefer SA. Mr. Songezo, I have a question for you, and also I think the other guy is not around. You mentioned something about Rivonia Circle.
Yeah.
And then I know this other guy, Ephraim. He was a founder. Oh, you were here, my leader. Sorry, I didn't see you. I didn't see you, my leader. One thing I want to know as a young person, a black young person, you are a founder of Rivonia Circle, and he's a founder of something like that, right? And you guys are now in politics. And you guys are also the founder of a political party. So I want to know, how does that work from a person who is working for an organization or a founder of an organization? Because for now, I'm also in an organization, surely you know, Mr. Lawrence. So I just want to understand from the NGO or the NPO to the political party, you know?
Excellent question. Okay, and number 3.
Hi, MAPS. My question is about longevity.
Sorry, is MAPS your name?
Yes.
Okay.
My question is about longevity. So as you guys are growing, is there a plan as different people start to come in with different agendas and whatnot, to not get to a point where in 5 years' time you're holding press conferences where you are throwing chairs at each other?
Three solid questions. Over to you.
Thank you. So I'll deal with them in reverse order. Start with the last one. You know, one of the things that I'm both confident in, but also there is a fear, right? And that is there are just so many people involved in the founding and just the very existence of RISE that it really doesn't belong to anyone in particular. And one of my discomforts with even doing this thing, it can give the impression that I founded RISE, right? And that is not so. And so I am hoping that that sense of collective ownership of what we're doing continues. And one of the disadvantages of a campaign is that we are not able to continue to build a democratic culture because there's a campaign that must happen, you know, must go and talk to voters and that sort of thing. And I worry about the impact on that, on building the culture that we want, because it's a campaign is a completely different animal. But the people at RISE are just, for me, they're not bringing cultures from other organizations where there's already factions and chair throwing, right? They are repelled by that sort of thing. And therefore, I have the confidence that that will not happen. However, I think the most important thing after the election is to get back to building a movement again, right? Because a campaign messes with that. And so I'm hoping that we can get the space and continue to have the commitment, because an election happens once every 5 years, you know. What's more important is to keep building the political culture that we're looking for, which seems held in suspension by the campaign. So I'm confident. On the question of sort of being a founder in an NGO and that sort of thing, you know, so here's my attitude towards things that we get involved in building. You must never confuse them with you as a person. You must be able to let go. Okay? And for me, leaving Rivonia Circle wasn't hard because I didn't start it by myself. The people that were there in the beginning are still there. So they will continue to do the work. It's got its own agenda. And what I can advise is that we must always build things that will outlast us. We must have people that will replace us. And for me, my attitude is the same at Rivonia Circle, it's the same in the jobs I've worked, it's the same here at RISE, that in 5 years' time, people must be asking, why isn't Vuiswa the leader, or Atlolile, or Nonkululeko, or somebody? Because we've given them the space to shine and be themselves. So that's my attitude. RISE doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to me. The economy question, you know, it's such a long answer, but I'll give a short example. If we took a decision, political commitment, that in a decade we will eliminate informal settlements, we will make sure every home has piped water, everybody is living in a decent house and so on, right? And you make a decision that out of these like 30 priorities that we have, we are going to choose 5 and we're going to focus on those. That on its own would have a stimulatory impact on the economy, because in the process of solving the indignities that people live in, you're also creating employment, you're creating commercial activity, and so on. And one of the failures of the ANC is thinking that everything is its priority. Right? We really got to choose what really is a priority and what we can tolerate for longer. Right? And you can only do that when you don't have ideological dogmas. To be honest with you, I don't want us to own an airline. You know why? South Africans go without food. What's more important? Is food production and food sustainability less important than owning a failing airline and we keep pumping billions into it so that the few of us who can afford to fly can fly? Aye, man. You know what I mean? We just don't have the will, or these guys don't have, which is why we are in rise and we're going to change it.
You did answer all three questions. Yeah. Thank you very, very much. I want to say thank you very much to our MC, to whom I'm going to hand back over, and thank you to you for a wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me stand on this side so I can look at Lindiwe as I
miss.
Hey, it's better. Yay, it's difficult. Protocols. To our audience, ladies and gents, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. The combination of viewing the docuseries, which is going to be made available for you to share widely and replace it with your Netflix and chill. You can watch that as an educational experience. There's so many stories. But here's the challenge that I want to pose to you is tell your story too. We all have got smartphones, we've got pieces of paper. We have been told that politics does not belong to us and that the stories of people is not important enough to be told if it's not on some of the digital and terrestrial platforms that we watch. I think testament to what Dasongs has spoken about is we have to aggregate the South African story so that we know more about each other. It's when we walk in each other's shoes that we start to realize that we are more similar than we are different. And therefore, this fractional politics does not serve us. One of our key values is solidarity. And the word united is in our vision statement because we truly believe that is how this country is going to be a formidable force. But it starts with telling our stories and getting other people to sit in our stories. I encourage all of you to walk with us. When we go to these community meetings, tag along. Come and see what it looks like to do a door-to-door in Soshanguve. Come and see what it's like to go to Orange Farm and sit with the elderly women there and break bread and get them to pray for you. Come with us to Etwa, where you can sit with children and see them perform nursery rhymes because they are happy to see you. Then you'll understand what is at stake. When we say 30 days time, we get to change the course of history. When you look at those people, you start to realize what happens and what is the cost of doing nothing. But Lindiwe Mazibuko, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for building Future Elect, which is a platform and an institution that's going to change this world forever. But moreover, I want to thank you for being the giant that all Rise leaders stand on. We now know what it looks like to be in politics in a different way. You are a mentor, you are an example, and you're someone that we truly treasure as part of our generation of leaders. Thank you. And to our national leader, Taput Prasongs. Good sir, I know this was tough for you, but we thank you nonetheless. We thank you for your sacrifice, your contribution, and leadership. May God continue to bless and keep you as we travel this journey of changing the world for forever. Thank you, Buti. Let's go. Let's rise for this beautiful panel of leaders. Take a photo, because this photo is going to be important one day. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gents, before we close, we've got a surprise act. So be seated. We just want to finish Voom Voom before we go back to our homes and into the foyer for some wine. I know you guys want wine. So if we can just settle for a bit, it won't be long. So to finish off, we've got an a cappella group from Soweto. Soweto a cappella, they're going to come and perform a beautiful piece of art as we wrap up this wonderful night. I'm not going to come back on stage. As they finish, we'll start to walk out. But I just want to thank you all for being here this evening. I want to thank our marketing department led by Tracy, who has made sure that today was even possible. Tracy is a formidable force that is behind the brand of Rise in all of its different formats. I also want to thank everybody who's traveled far and wide to be here with us. And yeah, we'll be in the foyer after this, enjoying some treats. And then we will bid you farewell. We have an important day tomorrow. We march to the JSE to go and make our voices heard around some of the issues of micro-corruption, of sex for jobs. There's just certain things that must just end. And tomorrow we have to prepare for that march. So if you want to take leave, you can do it on your phone quickly and come join us on the streets. As we shout and let the world know that Rise Mzansi stands for and against some of these atrocities that young people, particularly women, that they have to face to get access to opportunities in the workplace. On that note, thank you very much. Tebogo Moalusi signing out.